Hello again. I was going to say good afternoon, but it's actually evening, so I won't say good afternoon. My wife commented to me in last week's video that that I use my hands a lot in these videos. Okay, here's the reason why. The video has to see movement or it stops. So there are times when you see me reach out like this and I have to move my hand around on the pad in front of me, or it has to be depicting some kind of motion. So, I'm not usually one of these people who have hands all over the place, but in these videos, I make a point to do that so that it doesn't stop. Because if it stops, then I have to start all over again. And, what the heck. Okay, so down to work. Your essays, outstanding. You all took the essay concept very seriously. You all allowed yourself to really get into what you were writing about. And just about everybody put themselves also into the essay. And what do I mean? When they were writing, they would take examples from their own life to help make the points that we were trying to make in the essay. And what that means is you are allowing yourself to become one with the literature. And so that makes all that literature that much more understandable for you and that much more meaningful for you. So you're not just reading a story out there somewhere. You're taking the things that are going on in that piece of literature and saying, yeah, I've had something in some way similar to what's going on here. That's terrific. That is being an active reader, and that's what we want. So nobody tried to get by with the skimpiest essays possible. All of you explained yourself very well. You seem pretty darn comfortable in rolling out your thoughts in front of your classmates and me. And that's a great part of how we make this course even better, is by your willingness. You make it better, not me, but you make it better by being willing to say, this is what I think. And then in your comments to each other were really, really not only supportive, but also very well exampled. You would delve into somebody's essay and say, this is why I really liked your essay. You touched upon this point and this point, and I could really relate to that. Now, a few of you also said, I never thought of something that way. You've expanded my view on this topic or on this story by what you said. That's great. That really is, because that's a big part of why we are here, to share ideas. We all grow by sharing ideas. So it's not just what some critic said or what some professor said. It's what each other is saying too. Because as I've said to you, literature only has meaning in that it has meaning to you as a reader. If it doesn't mean anything to you as a reader, then to some degree, you're wasting your time. Okay? So you're doing a great job with all of that. For first week, I am really, really impressed. If it was the fifth week, I still would have been impressed by the essays you wrote this week. So you're doing a great job. Please keep it up, okay? And your comments were really excellent. Now, let me add this about the comments, though, okay? If you find that your ideas are totally opposed to what somebody else said and you can't justify their comments, then be willing to say that too, okay? Because a neat part of what was going on was you'd make a comment on Sally's essay. Sally would comment back to you on what you had said, and then you'd make another comment on it. That's great. Or some of you commented on what I said about your essays. That's really neat. Or what I said about somebody else's essays. So we're all expanding our own thought processes here, and that's really what we're all about. Okay, so far, I am really, really pleased with what you're doing. Okay, so let's keep that up. Now, this week we're moving on to the concept of plot. Okay? And plot means tying together a series of interrelated actions. Okay? You know, every story has a beginning and an end. However, in the story that we're reading this week, we will see a plot where the pieces of the plot are not given to us in exact chronological order. In fact, they're nowhere near chronological order. Okay? The story this week actually starts at the end, goes back to the beginning, hits a bunch of things during the course of the story. Okay? And then ends just a smidgen beyond where it started. So keep in mind as you're reading this story that the pieces of the plot have to be fitted together by you, the reader. Now, again, there are a series of interrelated actions. So everything that happens is related to the other things that are going on. You, as an active reader, have to figure out how to put these pieces together. Okay? We will meet Miss Emily Grierson. And the story is set around the turn of the 20th century, so around the year 1900. Okay? So we're seeing a very different world. First of all, the story is set in the South. And even today, the South is different from the North. Okay? Their way of doing things, their thought processes, all of these things are different. It's a different world. Not only that, but the story is set within just a few decades after the end of the Civil War. So it's only a short time after, in a sense, the old South, which was, farms or estates with slaves on them helping to grow cotton and tobacco and those kinds of things, where while very rich people owned these big estates, plantations, and some of them treated these slaves terribly. Okay, some of them treated them okay, but a lot of times they were treated absolutely terribly. They were traded, they were sold. You could have slaves that were husband and wife, and then the husband might be sold to a different plantation owner, so he's separated from his wife. I mean, it was just a terrible situation. Okay, well, this story isn't set all that much after that time, first of all. Secondly, that Southern society was a very genteel society when you remove the slavery issue from it. Okay, now, it's hard to remove that from it, I know, especially with all the concentration in today's world and the way that African Americans were treated during that time, and how they're still 145 years later fighting to be treated the same way Caucasians are. Why this came about, it's really crazy. Why it's been taking it so long to put things together is crazy. But in this old South, where slaves were treated so badly, that philosophy still hasn't. Well, I mean, it's not. We don't have slaves anymore, but that dual kind of treatment is still there. You know what today's world is all about. Okay, so you understand what I'm saying. So what we see is Emily Grierson, who's representative of that social level old world, and apparently her father had been from an upper level, and so she still feels like she should be part of that upper level, even though, as you'll find out relatively early, as her father died a long time ago. But anyway, Emily represents that old South where the world was doing so much changing. Now later on in the semester, we'll look at setting and how important setting is. But it's important for you to think about this story as set in that old South, which is very different from even the North of those days. And that South was changing because Emily's house now is being industrialized around it. Okay, not long before that, there was no industry. But now industry has moved from the North down to the south. And so factories and other kinds of things have been built, and Emily's house is kind of like the last standard of it, okay? Also, we have, excuse me, those ideas of, in general, a woman shouldn't be dating a guy without an escort. Well, Emily is trying to buck that. She wants the perks of the old-fashioned Southern tradition, but she wants to do her own thing a little bit too. And so she starts being seen in town riding around with Homer Barron without an escort along. So she's going against things. There's a whole lot of things that come into play in this story, okay? And your job is to try to put the pieces together so this whole story can come to make some sense for you, okay? Now, one of the scenes in the story talks about how there was this terrible stink coming from Emily's house, okay? And you really have to put the pieces together to figure out what this stink is. The mayor tells people to go and put lime in Emily's yard one night to try to get rid of the stink, okay? Your video question for this week, and do the best with this that you can. Your video question is to email me to tell me why Emily's house had started to stink so badly. I mean, it smelled putrid, and the people around were all complaining. Okay? So that's your video question. Why does Emily's house stink? Okay? Keep in mind, too, that because Emily came from, in the old days, kind of a high-class family, to some degree she gets preferential treatment for stuff. Okay? And so the mayor, Colonel Sartoris, tries to give her some kind of special treatment. Did her father really lend money to the town? No. That's something that Colonel Sartoris made up. So put the pieces together, draw yourself a timeline, and then put lines down where it seems like things happen logically so you can figure out the entire plot structure. And that's why we talk about plot this week primarily, because plot is figuring out the interrelationship of all of these things that are going on. Okay? So this is an unusual story, a bit of a shocking story, okay? But you've already seen some shock last week, so enjoy it, and your essay, assignment's already down there. Questions, you know where to get me, okay? Have a good week.